This is the Geek 2.0 podcast, and on this episode, we talk about how assistive technology is helping lower many of the barriers for people with disabilities. Alright, and starting the show, we got a special show. It's first of its kind here on the Geek 2.0 podcast.
Hopefully not the last, but we'll see.
Yeah. He's kind of like a guinea pig.
Great. I'm going to be the one to destroy. Thanks, guys.
Welcome.
We got a special guest straight from
Somewhere.
Thanks.
planet Earth.
Yeah, Florida.
What's your
What are you
name?
talking about? You're from Florida.
Introduce yourself.
Sorry.
It's Cliff.
My name's Cliff. I work with Joe. My wife's best friends with Susie, so I've known Joe for God knows too long. But I work in the IT field. I work at the same company as Joe. I do all the escalations and all that kind of fun stuff. So I kind of
Does the work we don't want to.
Yeah. Oh, that's supposed to be done? Yeah, that's my
call
job.
Cliff.
Yeah. Essentially.
And then tell us about your son.
Yay. I should have muted that. That is my fault. And that's why no other guest is going to be on the show.
First and last.
My son has CP. My wife and my son had a traumatic birth. So through that, he had brain damage, which ended up causing the CP.
What's CP?
CP, cerebral palsy.
Oh, okay.
And other things. He also has cortical blindness, which is damage to the nerve that goes from the eye to the brain. So he can see, but we don't know how much he can see. With that, he's also nonverbal. So using the things that we're going to be talking about today kind of helps us be able to communicate with our son.
Yeah, because that was the big thing is... It's like biomedical, bioengineering. Well, not bioengineering, but combining technology into the human aspect of things. To be external or even internal with a lot of stuff that's coming out nowadays. And that's what the whole show is going to be about today. That's why we have Cliff here. Just,
I figure we could talk about it, but it's another thing to actually have experience with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's really part of that's actually awesome that you guys invited me. Always listen to you guys, so actually be on. I'm like the
one fan.
Yeah. Well, the one that's not in Japan, but it's okay.
Yeah, long time listener, first time caller. So yeah, it's basically have him come on and with like Joe said, with firsthand experience with everything. And we'll talk about other things that, it's like Stephen Hawking and how he uses technology to communicate with the rest of the world because he's basically, his mind is locked in his body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which has got to be a rough. You know what I mean? To go as long as he did.
Well, yeah, considering he's not supposed to live as long as he has.
Yeah,
right?
He's actually the longest one that actually has, I think it's MS, that's has considered not MS, I don't think it's MS.
No, I have it on a tab somewhere. I have to look at it later, but yeah.
He's by far the person who's lived longest with that disease, and they kind of were pretty much essentially going to be donating himself to science afterwards.
Yeah, because they only gave him, a year or two to live when he was diagnosed with it, or when symptoms became so pronounced that he couldn't really walk by himself, and he was been stuck into a chair. Since that time.
I didn't see the movie, so I don't know.
Joe, there's more to life than just movie.
I mean, you just hear Eddie Munn just mumble and just be kind of like Stephen Hawking, the actor who played.
Yeah. So, what we're going to go ahead and kick off with, let's talk about your son and how he is able to communicate with the world now. Since he's, how old?
5.
Okay, so he's 5. So he's getting... out there with the world where he's wants to move around, communicate,
interact,
yeah.
Yeah, so we have a couple of things that help with that, with like moving around. We used to have something that's through something called Go Baby Go. It was something through online through the University of Delaware, where you pretty much DIY your own. You know how when you were kids you had those like Tonka trucks that you press the pedal and move?
Oh, yeah.
So pretty much we had to rig it with a switch and redo everything with it to help with the harness and everything else. And he pressed the button and he could be able to go.
It was really cool. Was it Tomater?
Yeah, it was Tomater.
I remember seeing a picture of that you posted when you first did that.
Yeah.
It was basically sorry to interrupt. It was so on the steering wheel itself was a big red button, like a giant horn button. And so he would push that, and that's what would allow him to go forward.
He just became really fun just to hold it down and just watch Mom and Dad run and try to go grab him as he goes through. So no different than you guys, like, your kids walking, going, no, stop. But it was just, now it's a motorized car that can break your shins. But yeah,
that's the fun part, right?
It's the fun part of actually was able to do it, actually getting there and to be able to. Essentially, with anything with special needs, is that you either do it yourself or or it's something that's already there. Which, just let's say your normal thing would have been, let's say, $100. Mm-hmm. Always add like 4 on top of that. And
because the thing was with funding is a major issue, because this is all brand new stuff. You can't really go out to a store or get from online, like Amazon. I mean, they sell everything.
Yeah, there's stuff on Amazon, but once again, something that would be $50 is now $250.
Yeah,
just because now they added the special needs on top of it. It kind of falls under that category. It's a niche, even though you have like a fourth of the people who have special needs or disabilities and stuff like that. That you now you're doing that and like, oh yeah, here's my niche, and now there's extra on top of it. But I understand, you're not going to sell that to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where, let's say, a couple 100,000 at the most, out of how many millions in the U.S. alone.
Mm-hmm. Alone.
So they guys think, okay, research, development, and production cost, and all this sort of stuff goes into the cost of it.
And that's a great thing, like I said, with the Go Baby Goes through the University of Delaware. So they provided all that for free. All you hear was like, here's the guide of how to actually do it. Cut the cable, do all this, connect everything. That was actually really good.
You would think, though, with all that yes, there's only a limited population that actually has it and would require it, but the research and everything that comes out of it could be used for anyone. You know what I mean? You would think it would be more open in that sense.
You would think, but they kind of, like you said, falls under a niche category where they think of it, but they don't really think of what kind of application you can use somewhere else.
Well,
at the time when they're doing it,
and that's part of like funding in general, is that they, most people would be like, oh hey, we want this, and that's all they do, and then they have to recoup all that fun stuff. But yeah, that's, I mean, you find you always find a way, just like Jurassic Park. Life finds a way. But in the same sense as that you do it, or
it's been spared.
No. It is definitely the opposite.
The wheelchair doesn't eat the tourist.
But yeah, with the other device that we have, it's called a Tobii eye tracker. Essentially, it's kind of like a Kinect, but tiny. It's about the size. It's about the thickness of about a pen, and about the length of maybe like a Surface.
Okay.
And it tracks your eyes. So just like how Kinect, you have to do your hand wave and do all that. You have to do eye, like left, right, center, all that kind of stuff. And with that, he can do double clicks. He can use Surface as like his communication device to be able to like, yes, no, stop it, that kind of stuff, or food. So he uses that as communication as well as gaming, essentially. Like there's things he can do and entertain and do all that kind of stuff. Because
what Joe told me during our last recording, last episode, is that it's more of like an elementary. It's just like big pictures, where like but you see that growing as he grows, where he's learning more and more.
Yeah, right now it's yes, no, it's a big stop sign, stuff like that. Stuff that's you would normally get out of a child that age, or somewhere where just simple commands at that point.
To make his life easier, instead of, I'm hungry, instead of, because he can't verbalize
right.
it.
Just getting angry or being... essentially, my son looks like he's always constantly swimming. But you can tell when he's more frustrated, he gets a little bit more agitated than he normally does. So with that, having him to be able to use that device gives us a breadth of more information about what he wants or what he doesn't like or stuff that he just wants to be able to do.
How do you choose, though, what's on the screen?
Some of them are customizable. Some of them are pretty straightforward, depending on the app that you end up getting. The one that he has for school is customizable. Like you can be able to do pictures for, in the sense that they give you a basic, let's say 100 different slides, and you can pick yes, no, eat, sleep, I want to go, that kind of stuff, and give, let's say, for school wise, like they do math problems and stuff like that. So it'll be like 1 + 2, and they'll give you the 4 options and pick the one that's from there. Just recently, because Halloween kind of came up, they had a picture book, essentially like, hey, what do you want to be for Halloween? So he went through and went all the things. So he picked Ninja Cowboy.
I remember that. How would you be a ninja cowboy? Ooh, you have like... How did he do it?
We ended up doing this was through school. So our vision therapist that's at school was like, "Here, this is what you want." And he was like, "Ninja cowboy." Like, okay. So we had already picked out his Halloween costume, but it was like, all right, so that's what he wants. Because last year or the year before, he wanted to be a race car driver. Because then at that time he was watching Mickey and the Roadster Racers. So it was like, race driver, yeah. But
that's my boy.
I mean, they do have Dale Earnhardt Jr. on that one every once in a while.
That's right.
I don't get you guys with the racing.
Don't
just
you
go
worry.
around making left turns all the time.
There's so much more to it than that.
I don't
I'm
want
going to be making a lot of people angry for saying that.
I don't want... He's just like, yeah, Mickey's racing and it's doing cool jump things. But it was just one of the things of be able to, like I said, to be able to get our son's point of view of what he wants versus just like, okay, here, we're doing this. So I mean, that's
then he's at the age where he's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want a ninja cowboy.
Yeah. No. Thanks. Great. Yeah.
So yeah, we go from that to like we mentioned with Stephen Hawking, is that with all this kind of technology that's external, where do you think it would be going within, like, let's say 5 years or 10 years from now?
Well, I mean, essentially they can do the same thing with that central Toby thing, and they can hook it up to his wheelchair, like his wheelchair, make it a motorized wheelchair, and like he can be able to go like forward, left, right, if he wanted to be.
Yeah,
able
bring
to
in some of your vision with your. Just blanked on the name of it. Say it again.
What, Connect?
No, not the Connect. The wheelchair. The
Mater.
The Mater.
Go Baby Go.
Yeah, Go Baby Go. So you can integrate that into the software.
Absolutely. But essentially, they do have it currently. He's very small. So like before he gets into like an actual full size wheelchair, they do have those abilities with that to be able to, like, they even have like the straws where you blow and you go forward and stuff like that. The same thing with Hope that they should. I believe they do. They have one where it's visual, where it's, I want to look left, go left. If I want to go forward, close my eyes, stop, that kind of stuff. Or
yeah, because I'm thinking we're integrating, like, when he's older, like in the teens, and he's moved out of his house or he's on his own pretty much, integrating GPS or something
absolutely.
Like where he's going down the mall, and then we're inside GPS. We're like with what was it? Google Goggles back in the day, where they have your mapping out indoor spaces.
Yeah, and absolutely, I can definitely see where that can absolutely go with that.
Even add LiDAR to the
right. With that, I mean, you can always have it to where that kind of setup would be perfect, but certain aspects, depending on the child's needs or the adults, your child's needs, would end up being that setup. But it kind of, you can be able to do it where, hopefully, I mean, to be able to be more independent and have like an arm that grabs stuff. I mean, you can definitely do that. Or I know there was, I forget, it's called MyFlex or Milo, where it's something that you put on your forearm and you can twist.
Milo,
I
think is what it is.
I remember I was showing you that.
Yeah.
Where essentially you can, as you flex your arm or flex your the muscles in your hand, and you can be able to give commands. They were showing it for like VR purposes, but they were also showing it for like medical purposes, that they can be able to do that kind of stuff to give that ability
Right.
to. Granted, all this stuff is way into the future, as much as they
Well, not necessarily. I mean,
not
like,
necessarily,
yeah.
but
It's within art in his lifetime.
yes, absolutely. But in the sense of where, like if saying at the beginning, like it's such a small market, they would
You're doing it yourself if you're doing it.
Yeah, you're going to be doing it yourself because it's like they're not going to reinvent the wheel. A wheelchair's going to work. They're not going to improve the wheelchair.
Well, it's with like 3D printing that's coming out. It's actually being exploding.
Yeah.
It's getting more mainstream, where the do-it-yourselfers and the maker community is bringing 3D printing technology for prosthetics or even for programming and software programming.
Yep.
It's coming out.
Yeah.
Which, how do they get the? Because you were talking about in the beginning of this with the eye tracker and that look left, look right. How do they do that calibration with him if there's the communication barrier to start?
Well, essentially, so if you were looking at an iPad, it would have 2 dots in the right-hand corner, and that should bring your eyes to go look to the right-hand corner. Same thing, it'll show those 2 dots in the center. Okay, now look at the center. So you essentially train. I mean, that's part of the therapy process of that, is that you go, okay, Lex, look at, the dot in the middle. Lex, look at the dot on the left. He can't communicate, but he understands communication.
Yes.
So I mean, you tell him, "Hey, look left, look left." It might take him a couple of tries to get there, but he'll eventually get to that spot to be able to calibrate those things. Like I remember for the Kinect, they had a card where depending on the gauge of how far you were, that's kind of where they took those cues. The same thing with that process is that be able to hone those skills. As more times he's using that device, the more times he's going to be able to use it a lot better. Just like anything else, you can't. Grandma, like you guys were talking about, last episode, Grandma trying to use the computer to be able to send text messages and stuff like that. You do the same thing with kids, the
jitterbug.
Yeah, you have to get them under that same process.
So yeah, it's actually with like technology with like the iPhone 10 with their face tracking with all. Basically, it's a Kinect.
Yeah.
But with like 30,000 infrared dots plastered all over your face.
Exactly.
That can also be integrated easily into something like that.
Absolutely. And once again, I mean, it depends on how far they want to go with it. But yeah, at the sky's the limit. They could be able to absolutely do the whole mapping, put a chip in his brain and have him, I think of this. And granted, that's way, I mean, I'm sure they can do it now. But I'm sure
actually, they have been doing it. It's called deep brain stimulation. They do it with like Parkinson's, depression, and all sorts of different other things that they can put a neurotransmitter inside your brain. And especially for Parkinson's, I was watching Vice, and it has another thing on that where they installed it into the guy that had Parkinson's. Within like 5 minutes, his tremors were almost pretty much gone. And they can adjust it on the fly while he's awake, because he has to be sort of awake for him to figure out what's going on.
I mean,
to make sure it's working.
While the adjustment, hopefully they're not doing that while his brain's open. And they're like, all right, here, we're going to throw that. Oh, man.
I think they're pretty good. They're surgeons. What was that commercial where he was doing brain surgery while he was filling out the website? Using the brain to make the patient do the website talk.
Absolutely. Well, they already know where that portion of the brain is to be able to do that stimulation with the whatever part it ends up being.
Yeah, because right now we're still like
in the infancy in the grand scheme of things. I mean, if we were going to do that, I mean, we can do that for the patients for that, or just for weird controlling way dystopia future of. Everyone feels good, and just push that out to everybody. But
start getting into the Minority Report.
Exactly,
it's like a Black Mirror episode.
Constantly recording. I want to delete that. I don't want those feelings anymore.
It goes into a central database and it's like
The movie I was telling you about, Final Cut.
Yeah. Essentially, they did have a Black Mirror episode where if you were rich enough, you can be able to record all your stuff and go back and play back and all that stuff. It's like the first season of Black Mirror. And I didn't get that far into it, but it was actually really interesting.
Yeah, pretty much you have to go past the first. If you want to watch it, watch episode 2 and later. If you want to come back to episode 1, yeah, you go ahead and do it.
Oh man, that first episode,
yeah, Jesus, that hits you hard.
Yeah, that's nothing like a public figure doing that in public. If you haven't seen the episode, it'll explain itself.
Forewarned.
Yeah, forewarned. Don't. That's not a kids one.
I don't know what they're talking about. You will.
But yeah, it's just all this technology. Within the last 20 years, it just seems like it has exploded. Before, your son probably would never have been able to do the things that he would have done.
He would have been put into a home.
And that's what they used to do back in the 40s and 50s. Any kind of...
they still kind of do that today, don't they? Isn't there still a push for that?
Not a push. They do, well, if depending on how severe your child is, they were like, well, you're gonna have to take care of him for the rest of your life. We're like, we understand that. Yes, they were like, well, there's the option of sending him to a place, and I'm like, no, he's my son. That's ridiculous that people. And granted, because my son was in the NICU for an entire month of when he was born, there was a child that was there that no one came to see him, and he was in the NICU for longer than Lex was. It's just heartbreaking of actually walking past, and the only interactions he had was with the nurses.
Yeah, that's hard.
Once again, it depends on the parent's mindset, essentially, at that point. Like, my wife was like, all right, great, we're going to do all the therapy as humanly possible. So when can I do that now? Like, he's like 10 seconds old, love. You can't really just, all the therapies now. Oh, sure, let's go do this.
No, it's on a schedule. You can't do it now. You have to wait till later.
Well, and Joe knows my wife. That's not an option. But yeah, I mean, the earlier you get into therapies and all the things that are there is going to extremely help your child. Even if your child doesn't even have the severity of abilities, like just having a speech therapy for feeding and all the other things, or speech therapy for getting over, me stumbling over my words.
Join the club. My brain goes, but my mouth is...
Yeah. But I mean, those therapies help with developmental and all the things that help, with your child. And I can't tote therapy. The therapists that have helped my son be able to do the things that he can be able to do is miraculous, and I thank them every day that they have the ability to sit there and work with my son. Even though, sorry,
it's all right. It's okay. Take a breather.
Yeah, hold on. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
But they be able to, because they were, when we brought him home, they're just like, yeah, he won't be able to do anything, but now he can do all the things. He's expressive and all the things that are associated with it.
He's got his own little personality. Absolutely.
Yeah. He's really picked on right now the lower lip of, but
he's got the puppy dog look going real good.
That's any kid at that age. It's like, hey, it's like genetically ingrained in humans. It's like the lower lip.
Yeah.
Get what I want. I'll do this.
Yeah.
So, do you guys actively research new technologies and new things for him, or are they brought to your attention?
A little bit of both. My wife is a special education teacher, so she kind of has newsletter kind of deal into it.
She knows a guy that knows it.
Yeah. But a lot of it's through therapies and stuff like that. Therapists are go through training every year. It's part of their, just like if you're any other job, you have to go through trainings to keep up with all the newest, latest, and greatest. And that's where we actually got the Tobii from. Tobii. It's the actual spelling of it. And that she was like, yeah, this is great. And here, use all this kind of stuff. And you can go to like special needs conventions, like what me and my wife do. It's called Family Cafe. It's based in Tallahassee, but they do their yearly convention in Orlando. Of course, because Disney's right.
Yeah,
So,
everything's
in Orlando because it's a mecca of convention centers / Disney. But yeah, you can go there and you can walk the halls and be able to see all these great innovations that they use. Like they have a table that's full of interactive abilities, like switches, which are like buttons, to controllers that are made for people with limited abilities and still be able to do gaming and stuff like that. And for visually impaired, like you have a laptop in front of you, but they have like also a keyboard that's about the size of your desk. That's A, B, all the things that are there for visually impaired, so they can be able to see those things, whether it's completely blind or minimal, like black and white.
Now, do a lot of, like, of course, parents and kids that come to this do a lot of like researchers from universities from the U.S. or even across the world.
Yeah. Speaking of which, a therapy that my son does, it's not technical in the sense, it's not like technologically wise. It was actually thought through Germany, and they brought it over and they set it through that. But like it's what once again get into that niche of what your child needs. And you can find stuff that like, oh hey, we want to work on something that's going to be for vision. You can sit on the computer for days and find like, oh great, we can be able to do this. Or like if your child has mobility issues, they can do like essentially like a hyperbolic chamber. That they help them with that stuff, or doing like water aerobics, that kind of stuff, where they have actually, I've seen it where it's a treadmill that is in a pool that's in a therapy room. Yeah,
because I've seen what you're describing as for a lot of therapy is because someone that can't hold their weight, but it's just to help them move. Essentially, it decreases the gravity on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Building those muscles that they normally can't work on their
own. The same thing with the elderly. That's why they have the jazzercise in the pools, because the buoyancy, it helps them be able to be more active without having the pain of
still be able to be in some shape versus versus sitting watching TV.
Well, we all do that.
Well. But it's one of those things that the scope of how much you want to go down that rabbit hole, you can definitely find that niche person who does, and knock on wood, that like you can get into the weird versus just like the people who do like sound therapy.
Fringe.
Yeah, the fringe. Yeah. You get into that. You can find that in some people that it works for, and some people they just want your money. And that's
the pseudoscience.
Yeah.
I can cure cancer with sound waves. Stand in front of the speaker.
I found this rock in my backyard. Let me put it on you.
Yeah, exactly. But and then you get into some of the higher tech stuff, like apps and stuff like that. Like for my son with visual, they had something that was called Teddy
Ruxpin?
No, not the creepy one with the eyes that's now moving and all LED-esque. But you can find stuff that's there for helping him with it. Essentially, he can see black and red and blues and stuff like that, so that help with his eye tracking. Essentially, it's what we use before we start getting into the the eye tracker and stuff like that. Just help him go, okay, focus, and he can be able to focus and touch, or be able to use that to use with the Toby to be able to, like, oh look, there's the elephant there, find the elephant, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of learning.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that you're just innately going to just randomly go
just
through.
Stick something in front. Okay, here, use this.
Here's the block, and your child will pick up the block, move the block. It's okay as long as you keep giving them that block or giving them that device or that tool, that therapy. It'll help them more and more.
And that's basically the whole thing is to help interaction plus learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
To make it easier for them.
Yeah, that's the big part is that you want to try to shoot for independence. And granted,
Well, that's the big thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely a big thing. You want to shoot for independence. Granted, sometimes independence isn't always an option, but at least you're working towards that. They're just not going to be just.
Well, it's also to lead to a healthier life.
Absolutely.
Instead of having to rely on either you guys or nursing or any kind of when they get much older.
Right.
It's just something instead of sticking in a home. Like you said, it's just more independent. It's a healthier living lifestyle.
Absolutely. And the technology is going to be there. Their technology is going to help with the ability to be able to do those kind of things.
Oh, yeah.
Granted, they have smart houses now. I can't imagine they just taking that smart house and now putting it into the ability for special needs. I mean,
hopefully they secured a smart because we kind of hate to have his wheelchair all of a sudden be hacked by.
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. But you can say the same thing. Our friend at work who has a insulin pump, essentially, you can still hack that. It's just given the time and determination. I mean,
anything can
be hacked. Absolutely, but you hope that someone's not that bad.
Talking about the human species.
I understand. And
there's a good and
it's
a
also
bad.
the same people who oh, hey, I'm going to steal this wheelchair. You're stealing a wheelchair for someone who has special needs. They don't need it just because...
We're just going to take them out of the chair I'm going to take a joy right now.
But once again, you get into that, you hope that a person who's doing that, is... Think of the best. Try to think of the best of people.
Yeah, the best of the people.
Absolutely. Hopefully everything's not in plain text while trying to...
Well, we can't all think of black and white of human emotions and their morality.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of a word. It's morality.
So have you, or has he had any interest in doing any type of sports or activities or anything like that? I mean, I know he's only 5, but still.
No, as being a father, you want to do that.
Are you going to be one of those parents, the start yelling and it's like, no.
I wouldn't say.
Bad call, ref.
Absolutely. There was, speaking of baseball, there was, I forget his name, and I apologize. There was this, it's a miracle camp kind of deal where you can do special needs with baseball and all that stuff. He was actually a pro pitcher that was had crutch and pitched. I forget his name. It's David something or other, but he was a pro pitcher, and we went there, and he had to bat and hit and run the bases and all the fun things that every child does. And there's actually a league that does special needs baseball. We haven't pushed them that far yet, just because with the mobility and everything else, we and actually you have to be a certain age. 5 is around the age that you can start signing up for those kind of things. And then I'll be like every other parent that has the weekends of, I need to go down to the baseball and do all that kind of stuff.
Volunteering for all that.
Yeah. But
sign yourself up for.
But right now we haven't introduced that just yet. I can't. But yeah, just we haven't introduced to those things. He does it at school, like he does swimming at school. They do bike riding. They do weight room. All those kind of things to introduce, and hopefully, we get reports every day, just like with your kid, at least that goes to school. You're not just yet.
Got a few years.
Your kid doesn't go to school yet?
No, she's being lazy.
Lazy, liking toys.
She's more interested in the phone and my video game controllers.
But you get the reports of like, hey, he really liked this, and and then hopefully we can get those things and find things that will eventually be able to do that. Like I said, if we wanted to do baseball, we can do a baseball league, and I think they do once a month or something like that. Versus
there is a lot of like the Paralympics.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a lot of different clubs. I was looking online. It's the Cyberthon. It's Cyber Marathon.
Okay.
Where it's all these companies come in where like deep brain stimulation or exoskeletons for people who can't walk, but within the skeleton they can traverse this course and everything like that, and they all come together and to showcase what they're working on to get it out to the world community.
Essentially for funding and all the things.
Oh, yeah.
That hey, look, we can be able to do this, and absolutely,
Because it all comes back down to money.
Of course.
Unfortunately.
I've seen where they've had those rigs on hips and help them with mobility, which is great. And if that could be used more frequently, and unfortunately that's not something that could probably, at least not right now, can't be used for everyday purposes, but at least you're getting the thought process like, okay, if we can make this smaller and make it into a belt or make it into like a
that's
chip.
Probably going to start as a military technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's actually, it starts in DARPA first, because DARPA is like this huge think tank of all this stuff.
And once again, there's a show, Adam Ruins Everything, where they were talking about funding, and our private funding, if it doesn't turn a profit, it's not, they don't care, and if you can do universities and all that stuff, and that's great, but then you have all the other factors of politicking and stuff like that. If it doesn't do anything that's going to benefit everybody or that particular lobby, it's not going to get off the ground. But then, but that's, once again, like you said, con of like, hey, look at this. This is what we can be able to do, and hopefully you have someone who has the heart and the money to be able to, like, that's great, I want to do that.
Yeah, like a Bill and Melinda Gates, because they do a lot of
philanthropic.
Yeah, thank you.
Not a problem.
Giving away money.
People have money that's just like, I just want to throw it all towards these people.
Make it rain.
Towards a good cause.
Towards a good cause.
There's plenty of people that make it rain.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But once again, that's not all of them are going to community colleges.
Veterinary. Back on track.
Yeah. But yeah, you want to be like, GoFundMe is huge, and all those kind of setup, like the Chive that does therapies and stuff like that, does charities to be able to work with people who have have special needs, or I think one of them, they bought a van and all this other things for this girl and I forget where it was, but they set up essentially GoFundMe account. I mean, which is great, but you also have to go on the will of other people, and which is
if you have the audience for it, it works. But you really have to have the audience.
You'd have to put yourself in front of it. It's something that me and my wife don't do.
Well, you have to become social media experts. You have to pretty much go on a press tour.
Essentially, you have to be your own publicist, your own person. You essentially have to quit your job and do that as a job.
Yeah, because you can't really do a 9 to 5 and then this till midnight.
You could.
There's people that do. It's not easy.
It's not. If you had your own business, or you had a job that's not a 9 to 5er, and you can log in whenever you want, kind of deal. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wish if that could happen, awesome. But my wife's a teacher, and I work in IT. I can kind of log in whenever I want, but they still kind of want the 9 to 5, because that's when most of our company is
when
9 to 5.
Everybody else is awake.
I mean, you can do all night stuff, but that's not going to happen.
There's other places to do that, but we're not going to go there.
Right. I don't have that voice.
That wasn't what I think, but sure.
But yeah, like the more funding, the more 3D printing, all that kind of stuff to help with, it'd be great.
That's why I brought up the 3D printing, because there was a case of a little girl. She I forget what the circumstance was. She lost her arm, and her father was basically quit his job and had this GoFundMe or try to get the word out to, and a lot of people from the maker community 3D printed her a new prosthetic that looked awesome. And there's a lot of cases where the kids have like the superheroes and it's all like
Man.
Iron Man.
The big one that went through YouTube viral is that Robert Downey Jr. came out as Tony Stark to give this kid an actual 3D printed arm, which is awesome. Yeah. And you could be able to get that, but I'm sure that was a lot of...
That took a lot of work.
That's not like, hey, I'm just going to do that on a Tuesday.
But
You know, RTD is not going to be sitting there on his computer. Oh, no, I'll be over there in 30
there's a
minutes.
company though of out there that is doing a lot of the 3D printed.
They do.
Limbs
There's literally
that are like superhero and like fantasy based. And
once again,
it started with a similar story. I think one of them, their child or someone they knew, needed something like that. It was really expensive, and they decided to do it, and it turned out that it worked out great.
Yeah, because a lot of prosthetics, or it is this boring look, it's skin tone, and it's just like, it's not interesting.
It
for
adds
kids.
a lot of confidence to the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially who doesn't want to be Iron Man? I mean, that's part of.
I mean, if I had the choice, I wouldn't be Iron Man.
Who would you be?
Oh, that's a big question. You're talking out of all, Marvel? We're going to get off topic.
But once again, you want those people who did that and started that thing, and it's that awesome. They have the engineering mind to be able to sit there and go, all right, great, I want to be able to 3D print. I could do that, but it would probably take me 10 years to get to the basis of be able to do that kind of stuff. Granted, I can go and pull their patent, or
a lot
to a
of it
point.
might be easier than you think.
I
A
know.
lot of it's also open source.
Right, absolutely. Like
And you
I
go
said,
to a website, download the
same
schematics.
thing. You know,
and-
I can Google it and be like, all right, cool, I can be able to make that. And to a point.
A friend of ours, Will, that has the 3D printer, was talking to him when he first got it, and they have apps that you can get on your phone that basically you take pictures of what the item is. So for, you can do like the arm or something like that, or, whatever it is, you take pictures of it and the program will map out the item in 3 dimensions in order for you to get the dimensions to 3D print something that's something for it.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you could.
in
It's
theory,
probably easier, but there's been no reason for you to look into that.
right.
So.
I mean, I'm sure, once again, I know 3D printing is still in its...
Not necessarily. There's
No, I'm not saying...
if you go to monoprice.com, you can get a very good, decent 3D printer for less. I think it was like $200.
Right.
And you can do it's like 7" by 7" by 8".
Yeah, it's going to come down to the size.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
really.
mean,
you can do
I can do
piecemeal.
7 by 7, but I'm going to be piecemealing that all.
You're going to be dealing with a lot of acetone.
Yeah, a lot of puzzles.
Do it outside of the garage, open garage.
Hopefully. Well, I mean, they have 3D printers that are your smartphones. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, there's...
you showed me that where essentially it's your
Like a
phone.
phone case, in a sense.
It literally, you put your screen onto like max level and it literally creates it from that.
It's really cool.
So yeah, it's even then if you think like personal 3D printing at home is doable.
Absolutely.
You can a lot of these situations and not corporations but companies, the GoFundMe started in a garage at home.
Right, absolutely. And if, like I said, I don't, which, there's, like you said, the need. Like, that need isn't there yet. If it became a more prevalent, I can probably be able to finagle that. But, you go with what you once again,
As
what
it
your
is right
child-
now, you haven't had to custom build anything for your child in that sense where you had to make the part.
Correct. Where I'm missing
Not
that. Yeah. I'm missing that corner piece that I need to make.
Yeah.
Well, you go to Toys R Us, you get Power Wheels, strip it out.
That's what it's. Power Wheels. Thank you. That was going to bother me.
You can go home and think about it.
What was that term? No, it's basically you take a Power Wheels, the shell, strip it out, get all the 20-minute battery, you put in some big car batteries.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Memories.
But yeah, you hopefully, like you said, like I said, like I found that University of Delaware that had the Go Baby Go. That great, you had the ability to do that. And once again, you Google, being whatever you want to use, is a great is an extremely you can find whatever you
Jeeves.
Oh.
Wow. Going way back.
It's still out there.
Is it?
Yeah. It's just ask.com,
Do you use CompuServe as well?
Netscape?
No.
Do you still pay for AOL?
Maybe.
Oh, we were talking about your last episode. They still have BlackBerry services. You can find it on the Google App Store.
Is there anything that you're aware of coming down the pipeline that you've seen that's of interest or has intrigued you?
Yes and no. I mean, like, to be able to use the Toby more, his eye tracker more, it would be able to find a way to be able to integrate that. But once again, there's only so much you can do now. I mean, he is 5. There were like I said, the family cafe thing is like, it's like small babies, adults. There's nothing really in between. Like there's some stuff, but it's small.
It's not a one size fits all type deal.
Yeah, unfortunately, when it comes to that, there's not a hey, that's great and be able to do that kind of stuff.
Put everybody into a Dalek.
Yeah. Well, so I'm just kind of like, as we're sitting here, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, God, that'd be really cool. Yeah, I'm like thinking like taking Roomba pieces and putting it into the wheelchair, adding the Kinect into it.
Did you have a whole bunch of cats sitting on top of people?
Adding the sensor, adding a sensor into the parent, so then you're not necessarily having to push the child. It's using the distance between you and them and keeping them close behind.
You can put stuff together.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm like.
Okay, programmer.
I'm getting there. I'm learning.
Hello, world.
I'm past that, thankfully.
He can make the calculator.
Oh, did you change the colors in the font?
I'm getting there.
But yeah, I mean, if there was something truly, you get down to the point of like, if something that's going to help, and you could find something to be able to do that. I mean, absolutely. I mean, just if I had the money and everything else that was associated with it, yeah, I'd be able to do what I want to be able to do. I'd be able to find a better rig to be able to give my son a little bit more independent walking. Right now, there's stuff that's there. It's not technically. I mean, it's an engineer had to come up with the rig to be able to do it.
Pretty, yeah. It's not feasible for walking around outside, or
right.
It's outside of a lab.
I can only imagine what they would use for it too, because it'd probably be something like a Segway, and I don't know if I'd trust that.
No,
because Segways have gotten better, but there was that issue for a while where they would just randomly kick into reverse and down, and if you're a special needs, you can't exactly hop off of it like you could a normal person.
Right.
So that
you can't hit the red button.
Yeah, that's a little risky.
Well, once again, like I said, if there's a will, there's a way.
Of course.
Something that could be there. It's how much time and energy, and once again, you're not gonna replace the wheel if it's already there. People will think outside the box. It's just human nature in general. The people will always think of those kind of things, but a wheelchair is a wheelchair and it's going to work, and you could be able to do it.
Now, moving from that, going into what do you think about like bioengineering?
Yeah, absolutely. There's
like custom genetics. Like even before your kid is born, you say,
DNA sequencing?
Like Gattaca?
Gattaca, that's we had a whole part of doing that. Let's take out the morality of it, but to look at it scientifically.
Okay, so no morality. Okay, this is easy enough now.
You got that out the window.
But
done.
Absolutely. I mean, they kind of do that now. Like when we had, when our wives were pregnant, they had the thing where you can check for downs and stuff like that. They can't correct it. They can just check
but you have a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. They can test the amniotic fluid or whatever. They don't really dig into the baby because that's probably problematic. But
think?
We're getting into the medical side. None of us are medical.
Mad scientist hat on.
Then we start getting into Auschwitz, and that starts getting bad.
The Hitler and all that.
But they can do stuff now. Granted, the gene therapy kind of deal.
Yeah, a lot with like stem cell gene therapy. They're doing a lot of work.
Oh,
with
absolutely.
That now.
My wife used to work for a company called CryoCell, where they would do stem cell storage.
Works right down the road from them.
That was years ago. But yeah, like you can store your those stem cells and be able to help with that kind of stuff. Whether
there was something that I saw on that though, where it's like it's not really worth it.
Yeah. Once again, you get into
it's you're banking something that down like 20 years down the road
Right.
might come
Same
to
thing
fruition.
with, being cryogenically frozen. You hope that you're staying there and being preserved for
Properly.
Not like the company, I saw it on the news that was like, oh yeah, they didn't pay for their electric bill that month, so they all ended up losing a bunch of...
Or, I don't know, a major hurricane comes through and destroys the power for...
Yeah, you hope your
Backup generators and
all
gas.
gassed up, ready
Yeah.
to go.
Good luck with that.
But, it's for the hopeful down the road that the people who are doing those things has
the fringe.
Not the fringe, but hopefully
Well,
that
no, cryogenics is fringe.
Yes,
as we
but
look
in the
at
sense of like the stem cell research, people are still doing it. Are they doing it for, okay, they can grow a better ear if you lose an ear, or are they doing it for, okay, we learned this, and this, and we can be able to put that into a pregnant woman and be like, hey, you're going to have a perfect human child that's going to be Chris Hemsworth. You know what I mean? Like
a lot of people.
I take that as, you want, the perfect specimen.
You're looking at in a magazine.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I like this one.
Yeah.
Wait,
I like
why are
brown.
you looking at paper magazine? You're looking at
Basically,
tablets.
start looking at...
It's weird science. You have
start
to cut
building
it out.
your child, basically.
Ugh.
Going down a checklist. Yes. No. Yes. It's just one of those things that is coming out within 20 years or so.
I could see the technology getting there. The question is, do you see it
in the
being
US,
adopted?
no.
Yeah, but once again, it'll be thousands and thousands of dollars to just even get it to where, okay, great, you have the plant in, but now you have to pay for it'll be like video games where you have to pay microtransactions.
Service on demand.
Yeah, microtransactions. Hey, you want to be happy today? Pay $25.
And hope you don't get it from EA.
Oh, server down.
It's a pride and accomplishment. Buying that genetic loot box.
Yes, I got the rare. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, it could be done, and hopefully they do it, and they want to be able to start that process. But you hope for the best, plan for the worst.
You get to that point, though, and you almost wonder if it would be more... Again, morality aside, just going to state that now. You almost get to the point where is it worth going through all that, or is it worth doing the, not artificial intelligence, but uploading your consciousness?
The singularity kind of process.
You're talking about either
Yeah, you build a better
completely
body.
designing a human from scratch, or just take the consciousness and put it into something that can't be destroyed.
Like you were talking about previous, the surrogate kind of deal.
Yeah, again, morality aside. So where is the effort really worth?
You start looking at
in that sense?
everlasting life,
Yeah.
immortality.
Absolutely.
And once again, you plan on that they'll work towards it, whether they'll actually complete it or they'll lose funding out of it because, God forbid, money gets moved or cut. Knock on wood that cut all the budgets. But
Just take it down. You got to do this in under $20.
yeah, essentially, hey, we want you to build this great thing.
Here's some duct tape
Yeah.
and popsicle sticks.
Yeah. But then you start getting...
Kind of how we got to the moon, to be honest.
Well, yeah.
True. But they had scientists to be able to work with that
smart
kind of...
people
Yeah.
behind the scenes.
They had people to be able to do all that stuff. You're talking about going to the moon versus Timmy gets legs.
I mean, you look back on it, and it was, at the time, you might as well have been talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, it was also... Going on this tangent, it was more of like an arms race between the U.S. and Russia at the time. This is who can get the higher ground. That was a whole, let's get to the moon.
Yeah.
Be the first one, so we got higher ground.
It
Once
became
again,
it was a military.
motivated
Yeah.
for us to be able to better another person versus helping
Timmy.
helping out the people who need it. Try to with people with special needs have Social Security and stuff like that. Hopefully, that stays there future can't depict that, unfortunately. It would be great to be able to know that, hey, there's going to be funding for people who have special needs or disability, or when we get older,
because a lot of the forefront is basically getting it into the public's eye.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And getting it more out there, and
Right.
Having a demand.
Yeah.
Well, and also, bad thing to say is that when this person, whoever, let's say celebrity or president or senator, has a child that has Downs or something like that, then they get funding. Then they have that. They can be able to push all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's already happened with Christopher Reeves.
Yeah.
When he had his broke his
accident.
neck.
Yeah.
And that was
it
same thing
brought
with
the forefront
Michael J. Fox with Parkinson's, and
Michael Jordan with AIDS.
Michael
No.
Jordan.
Or
Magic Johnson.
Sorry.
I'm like, really?
That was
I
my
didn't hear
bad.
that. That would have been news.
But
let me
a lot
Google
of the
that.
research
Yeah,
changed when he.
Yeah, and
when
same
that
thing.
happened.
You don't.
It's kind of bad wishing
Yeah.
like something bad to happen to a famous person.
Yeah.
So the public actually cares.
Absolutely.
To put it bluntly, to actually have them care, say, "Oh, I'm going to actually spend money because I'm seeing this in the TV and the news and
exactly.
all that."
Hopefully, the Kardashians have something that be able to push that to the forefront, because they have pull.
With a certain segment of the population.
But once again, you want the biggest pull, like you said.
Yeah.
If I quit my job and put 110% into being a publicist for my son, and be able to put him out there and go, look, he's cute and adorable, and help me, or he needs this, and who can
We're
help
bringing attention to
this, hey, this is person who can be able to do this and this. I have this great thing, but you don't want to. I hate that feeling of, you help me with what I want,
Right?
or what I need. That I always feel weird. I feel like that's just me, and there's people who do that and have no problems with it. I just hate being that
You don't like
dance
being
mom.
a charity case.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to be that dance mom, that sits there in the background pushing their child in the forefront so that they can be able to recoup. Like you said, I don't really pull. Don't do charity. I don't want charity. Unfortunately, that's just me, and there's other people who eat that up and they just go for it. I know Susie a long time ago, when we were trying to get Lex his new wheelchair, did a GoFundMe page, and we ended up getting the money for it, and very much grateful for that. But we would have found a way.
Now, as we go ahead and round up the end of the show, is there anything that you want to promote? Put yourself out there.
You've got a very small forum. Go for it. So you can listen to yourself later and go, "Oh, that sounds like a great cause."
I'm going to do that.
I mean,
you're part of. You do a lot of work with the Hugs Foundation.
Yes. Hugs is I forget it's hydrocephalitis group, pretty much for neural diseases. It's Hugs. If you go to, I'm sure it's on Facebook. If you go to Hugs, Hugs of Florida .org. Yes. They
get the website.
It's someone who's locally, and usually there's about 12 families that kind of do it, and that goes towards people to be able to help. I mean, there are also, you could find like CP awareness and stuff like that. Wearing green, that kind of stuff. That's the color for CP. We all just happen to be wearing green. I think that's happened to be out of just kind of randomness.
Just looking around at all of us, we got green on.
That kind of stuff. There's a bunch of organizations out there. I mean, you go to, I forget what it's called, Early Steps for kids who have traumatic births. That kind of stuff. It helps them with helps parents with the early with the early process of trying to be able to work with all the things, or it's a support group. Yeah. But they also help you point you to those resources, and that's great. I mean, you want to be able to. That's the biggest thing. If you do have it, find resources, reach out to people. They will more than happy to be able to point you to the best doctors and the doctor that's going to help you the most. resources are going to be the best opportunity.
Because a lot of times is, even though you might not like it, is reach out on Facebook.
Yeah,
Facebook
absolutely.
is huge. I mean, you put out a little thing in there, and that your network will find out
spread.
Yeah.
If you follow other people, hey, they retweeted this, or they followed this, or shared this. And
Facebook or Twitter. It's either or. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's just something to get the word out. Where if you don't even know where to begin, all of a sudden you found out, hey, your son daughter has such and such.
Absolutely, and my wife has been great for that. That other people have come up to her and like, hey, how'd you get all these resources and all that stuff? And we as a family would be more than happy to give that information out.
Well, that's kind of the biggest thing. Just whenever you see someone out and about with these scenarios, they're still people. Like it's a big thing to kind of
still a human being.
Yeah, and a lot of people tend to stare and look and like are unsure of how to handle that.
Yeah, talk loud, make weird gestures.
Hello, my name.
Right. And not everyone, there are kids that do need that, but that's not the default.
No, you don't want to go to somebody and be like, and the person's there like, sure, yeah, okay. I can talk, I can hear.
Having children staring, it is nature of the thing. They're curious. They're like, Mommy, what's that? And more than happy to explain. But, when it's adults that are staring, and you kind of get that weird guilt of like, oh, you get that face of like, I'm sorry for your plight kind of deal, but I don't look at it as that. That's my child, and I'll do absolutely anything for him.
Yeah, you see past it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go ahead and round out, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Well, you're welcome anytime.
Hey, if we want to have another topic, I'd be more than happy to come. Of course.
And thank you for joining us on this episode. It's going to be coming out pretty much before Christmas.
Oh, I'm going to be the Christmas Carol episode.
Yeah.
You're going to bring everyone down right before the holidays.
That's always what I wanted. Thank you.
So, when you hear this, send Cliff all your emails and all that.
You can send it to Geek 2.0, and they'll be able to forward it off to me.
You send it to Joe.
And we'll have the links for all the foundations and everything that we've talked about.
In the footnotes?
Yep, in the show notes and all that. And we'll post it up on Twitter and Facebook. Just get the word out for everybody, that, especially at the time. And Christmas is a good feeling. Good feeling holidays.
Yeah.
People tend to give more.
Yeah. So, thank you for listening to the Geek 2.0 podcast, and you have a good one. Later.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Geek 2.0 podcast. Be sure to check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Geek 2.0 podcast. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Geek 20 podcast. Don't forget to visit our website at geek20podcast.com for older episodes, news, and much more. And make sure to subscribe to our podcast through your favorite podcatcher player of choice. The Geek 2.0 podcast is part of the Collective Network.